Hi, everyone, and welcome to another installation of Practical Creativity. Very excited to be with you here today. And I'm here with an amazing creative person in her own right, the wonderful Jessica Shraybman. And I'm going to introduce her and ask her to just take over. Tell us a little bit about you, Jessica, and what you're up to right now.
Oh, you're so nice. Thank you so much for having me. I know we were chatting a little bit beforehand, but I'm just so impressed with how you have done live and stayed connected with people pretty much, I know, for 31 days and then twice a week since then. And that just seems like it takes so much work. And I commend you for the work and also just staying connected with people. Thank you for having me. Yeah, thanks. So I am an attorney. I'm a business and intellectual property attorney. So I work with a lot of Miami-based companies, from tech startup companies to some of our nonprofit organizations, and also artists and creatives. And I help them to structure relationships and develop strategies, and then hopefully successfully implement those strategies. There's a lot of intellectual property out in the world these days, between branding to software to all sorts of photographs and video content. It's like IP touches pretty much everything we do these days. So that comes up quite a bit in all of the relationships and projects that I get to work on.
Amazing. And that's such a good point. When we are thinking, and I'm a content creator, so for me, I'm thinking all the time, what can I be sharing? How can I be connecting people? And often that takes the form of videos and blog posts and that kind of thing. So it's just something that the creator doesn't necessarily think about, and yet it is so important. So can you share with us just a little bit of, what is on people's minds right now, and how are they navigating these times while protecting their intellectual property?
Yeah, so these times are definitely what is on everybody's minds. A lot of my clients are also in the event space. So I work a lot with photographers and some other coaches and kind of wellness and mindfulness organizations and videographers and florists. And a lot of events have been postponed. Fortunately, a lot of things are being postponed rather than canceled. This isn't directly related to IP, but something that I'm seeing a lot is just how people are sorting out what to do with a whole lot of commitments that they have already made. Thankfully, with intellectual property, that is not something itself directly affected, I think, by COVID, but the relationships and things that might have been expected to happen during this time are, in terms of intellectual property directly. Government offices are held up, things are moving much slower, processing times are delayed for things like trademarks and copyrights and patents. So that's something that thankfully is easy to explain to folks, and people get it. So thankfully IP itself hasn't been too negatively affected, but a lot of the relationships that might include some sort of IP are being held up right now.
Totally.
Yeah, and I think people are trying to do the best that they can. In the beginning, unfortunately, I think a lot of people kind of had some, understandably, I think we all kind of had a bit of a freak out. Oh my goodness, what's happening? What do I do? And there was quite some tension the first few weeks of the lockdown. Thankfully, at least in my experience and the clients that I've been working with, we've kind of been settling things down and making tweaks and accommodations, and really just trying to remind everybody that, we were in this relationship before this happened. We want to be in it afterwards. And let's try to make the best of this that we can.
Absolutely. And relationships have actually come up a lot in these conversations that I've been having with people. What does it mean to network in a time where we can't just meet people that we might not otherwise meet? So online and navigating all of that has been really an interesting challenge. But also a bright spot, I'd say, where people are looking to deepen connections. Even with my own parents, we have a virtual dinner date one time a week now with people in 3 states, and that's not something that could have happened before. And I've been personally really impressed with, I have a copyright for my book, which is in the form of a deck of cards. And the US Copyright Office has been very, very proactive in the way that they've been keeping me updated as to what the status of my application is. They gave me options to upload a copy of it or to wait for them to get back into the office. They've been amazing. So
That's awesome.
yeah, even if things are a little slow and delayed, I think everybody is really understanding why that is and being pretty empathetic, and good for the Copyright Office to give people options, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And I know that the Trademark Office has given lots of extensions for filings, like responses to office actions that might come up and missed deadlines and things like that. So yeah, so it's nice to see those little accommodations. And I'm so glad to hear from you that the Copyright Office has been so proactive, because that's something, you know, as you know, you put a lot of work into your deck and it's beautiful, and you want to make sure, you know, on the one hand, you want to get to, you know, getting it out there, selling it, sharing it with people. And at the same time, you want to make sure that you have the protections in place. So in that sense, you're right. It can be a holdup for people who are waiting on registrations in order to get product or services into the market. You're totally right about that.
yeah, absolutely. And you're hearing from all types of businesses, so, and all sorts of individuals. So when people are looking for protecting their personal intellectual property, they may not think that they have the capability to do that unless they're like a big firm or part of a big company. But you are working with a lot of individuals, including me, right? So how would you recommend a person goes about knowing whether they should seek to get a copyright or to protect their work in a certain way? And what are some of the myths around intellectual property and how like big and official you have to be in order to make a process like that, to undertake a process like that?
Oh my gosh, Marta, I love that question. And I think you are absolutely right that it's not something that is limited or just for large corporations with lots of other assets. Intellectual property, and just to take a step back, so intellectual property comes in a number of forms. I think you and I are working together on a trademark, which is very exciting. That is protecting your brand name. Trademarks also protect logos and slogans and things like that. And then we also have copyrights, which protect kind of the manifestation of a creative thought. So that might be like your deck, or even photographs and music, which you might have some that, you know, is worthwhile to copyright. So anything that is a work of authorship that gets created into a physical, tangible form. And then there are also patents, which are inventions and developments on inventions. So all of those are different types of intellectual property. And I think a lot of times when people think about IP for short, they are thinking about patents, which can be pretty costly. That said, there are options that are a bit more economical for people as far as patents go when they are kind of in early developmental phases. But in terms of copyrights and trademarks, those are, relatively speaking, in terms of business expenses, they're not crazy expensive. And copyrights, particularly the filing fees for copyrights, are pretty small, actually. And in the past few years, the Copyright Office and the Trademark Office, they have made a lot of changes and effort to make their websites and the applications user-friendly. And of course, there are nuance, and it's always best to get some advice to make sure you're doing things correctly. But particularly those two, copyrights and trademarks, are really designed for anybody to be able to get on the web, navigate through, and submit their applications. And there's so many resources on both copyright.gov and uspto.gov, which is the US Patent and Trademark Office. So many resources that it really, again, it's designed to be very user-friendly for anybody. And it is very important, as I mentioned, these days IP touches pretty much everything that we do. And something like trademarks, which comes up with, I would say, 100% of my clients, we have the trademark conversation, because as you are developing your company, whether it's for a new product, a new good of some sort, or whether it's a service that you're providing, in addition to providing that thing or that service, you're developing a reputation for yourself, for your company. And trademarks are really intended to protect that. It's the connection between the consumer and the source of their good or service. And it's really, as you invest time and effort and energy and money to developing your brand, it's really important to make sure that you can own that brand name and that you have the means to protect it in case other people are starting to use it, whether intentionally or not, starting to use it similarly for theirs. Very, very important.
I love this, and I call this series, and a lot of what I do, practical creativity, but it's like we're talking about the practicality of being creative now. Like, how do you actually protect your work, your creative output, right? And I love what you were also saying, which is before you sink a lot of time and effort into using a particular phrase, it's really helpful to know that is not going to land you in trouble, right? So being able to know and before you put a lot of your intellectual output into a certain thing or a certain phrase or a certain look, it's good to know that is yours. It can be yours.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not the type of person that likes to share, like the horror stories of how things have gone wrong. But it has happened a number of times that someone has come to me and they had already developed their website. They had printed their business cards. They had been presented. They were even selling services. And they never thought about a trademark. They thought, well, I'm just a Florida company, nobody else I know is doing this. And they have received cease and desist letters, which sound very scary and should be taken seriously. But more importantly for us, for me, for my client at that time, was kind of the heartbreak I felt knowing how much energy they had put into that brand name and how attached they were. Aside from the money they spent on website development, which can be very expensive, and other marketing, it was just the connection that they themselves had formed to that identity, and to have to redo all of that can really be a step back when the owner of a company should really be focusing forward. So it's a conversation I have with people like from day one. It's something that I really do believe is a very important step for all businesses. And, if it's a 1-person show, if it's a 10-person show, to me, it's the same. You're putting your effort into it and make sure you can have it.
Yeah, I love that. It must feel so good to help people get on the other side of that though, right? So you are also a super creative person. You're very involved in the arts and civically engaged. You're on a couple of boards. You're out and about in town and here in Miami, really helping to support and contributing not only, you know, your time, but your talent in a lot of ways. And I know you're a big supporter of a lot of groups here. So tell us how your creative life is. I think law and what you do is very creative. That might not be something that people think about when they think about an attorney. So, but I think, you know, interpretation is very creative, right? And helping clients with strategies is also very creative. But tell us kind of how your creative life blends or goes across your personal and professional lives.
That's so awesome. Thank you. And I love creativity, and personally, I've always wanted to go to art school. My recently immigrated parents had different ideas for me, and I ended up going to law school, and I'm so glad that I do get to work with so many artists and creatives. And so part of me, I think, is I've always been fascinated by language and by words. I know that in my personal life, it can drive my family and friends crazy because I'm such a stickler for the words that we use in conversation. But in terms of that being a skill as an attorney, it has been something very valuable for my clients, because when they are getting into partnerships or when they are sharing their intellectual property strategically with another organization, the words legally have a big impact. And there are certain things, particularly with IP, that certain contract provisions have to be drafted very specifically in order to properly protect intellectual property. And I'm just such a lover of words and such a stickler for words, that one thing my clients just really appreciate, because they know that when I am working on a contract for them or helping them negotiate a contract, they have the confidence knowing that they know exactly what the contract means and that it accurately reflects what they were expecting. And oftentimes I thankfully work more of the times it's collaborative than adversarial, which as an attorney, I'm so thankful that that's my experience, because as an industry, I think we're known for being very adversarial. And so it helps the people to know, okay, this is what we are both expecting. This is what we thought. This is what we understood. And it gives them a way to move forward in the partnership with an added sense of trust. Mm-hmm. And that's just something that it always just makes me so happy to know that I can help people that way, because it can be very intimidating to receive a contract and it says all this stuff. And in terms of creativity, sometimes I'm just I get really excited about other people's excitement. And when they share their ideas with me or the way that they're thinking about structuring something, my brain immediately starts firing in so many other ways. And oftentimes I, without trying, come up with some ways to see it or some ways to go about whatever they're doing that helps them to kind of implement a bit more security and structure again, so that they can move forward with a trusting, awesome relationship. So it's fun.
I love that.
Really, yeah.
And what you're really talking about is like solutions. So, and what you're describing is actually what I think about as a classically trained artist. I don't know. I think artists are always not, they just don't stop. Like if there's a barrier, they find a way to go around. And that's very much what you're describing, which is like, okay, so here's the limitation. How can we, get our brain into a totally different place so that we can see other possibilities? And that was so satisfying.
It's really awesome, especially again, because attorneys, I think, are mostly known for being no-sayers, and I'm such a yay-sayer. So yeah, exactly. It's like, okay, this is what we want to accomplish. These are the parameters we know we have to work within. How can we work within them or work with others to modify it? I really try to find ways to the best of my ability to say yes and help people make things happen. Even when I know I should be saying no, I oftentimes tell my clients, like, I know I should be saying no, but I really want to find a way to make this happen. Yeah, it's true. It's true. For me, it's about helping people to accomplish what they want to. Of course, keeping in mind risk and areas of vulnerability and all of that. I'm, not. Yeah, I'm thoughtful legally within all the parameters, but yeah, for me, it's really about getting people to be able to make happen what they want to.
It's so cool. And it just reminds me of kind of like in other languages, the word attorney or lawyer means actual advocate, right? So in a way,
right.
like helping to advocate for that person's potential for the work that they're creating, their creativity. And then through the power of words, you're also helping protect them and their work, because oftentimes I feel like, yeah, we didn't read the fine print, but if we had an advocate, somebody to really have in mind our vision and how we can get there, they don't have to be the experts figuring everything out. It's so great to have an advocate and a thought partner in ways where, you understand the vision and can actually help them with the words that can be understood, not just between you two, but also legally, so that there's no gray area out there. That's so cool.
Marta, that is so awesome. I had never even thought about it, but you're so right, like abogado. And in Russian, it's advokat. I had never even made the connection, but you're right, it's so much more. And you counter that with the American joke that a lawyer is a liar because of the, similarity in sound. And you're so right. It's really about advocating for people's goals and helping them to make it happen. I hadn't even thought about that. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah.
And how did you get into this type of law? Like, it's really fascinating, but I mean, you use words in all law, right? So how did you find yourself doing this, which, you're the only person I know who does this type of law. So what inspired you, or how did you find your pathway to it?
Yeah. So again, going to law school was totally not on my radar at all, ever. Even in law school, going to law school was not on my radar. And it was not something I ever expected. And as I mentioned, I always just had such a love for visual arts in specific, but for the arts in general. And as I was in law school, I knew that if someday I did end up actually practicing, that I wanted it to be related to arts and business. I've always been kind of entrepreneurial myself. I've always really, just been a go-getter, and I've always really liked business for the kind of fun of it. So I knew that if I was going to be an attorney, that's what I wanted to practice. And for a little while, I was doing something completely unrelated, which was death penalty work, which I really loved and is really, really amazing work. And I have so much respect for my colleagues that devote their lives to the work. I am also a sensitive soul, and it was just a bit too difficult for me. And having come from that and eventually finding my way back into business and art, I think has really helped me to kind of keep perspective, and kind of, I don't think that I get stressed out too much, because when I think about what's on the line in business transactions as opposed to what's on the line in capital punishment cases, they're very different things. And really, I just feel so lucky and fortunate that I kind of knew the things that I didn't want to do, and I stayed away from the things I knew I didn't want to do. And you know, I did. So I got my start in business transactions after I finished the bar. I literally Googled arts and business attorneys in Miami. And I had found someone who was doing startup law. And at the time, I thought startup meant starting a business. At the time, I actually was not very familiar with tech companies and startup companies as how I know them now. So I messaged this other attorney and told him that he was actually doing kind of what I thought I wanted to do. And we met for coffee, and halfway through our coffee meeting, he actually told me that he was thinking about hiring someone. And I told him to consider that my job application, and thankfully it worked out, and we worked together for about 3 years. And during that time, he was really awesome in that he let me, as long as I was getting my work done, he gave me the freedom to explore my own interests. And that's when I was, I worked at Knight Foundation when I was in law school. And through them, you know, I just was catching events and going to events and meeting people. And I really have a lot to thank to my former employer for giving me the freedom to explore all that then, which has now just led to me having an awesome book of business and art clients. I love it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That is so awesome. And it's funny how we just end up in the right place at the right time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even when you don't see the path, sometimes things just come together. I have another question, which is, so to have a law practice and to have a creative practice just implies that you're always going, you're always evolving, you're never a master because there's always a new challenge, right? And you as a person and as a professional, you develop experience, and every day you gain experience by doing. So I think of the word practice as a really cool word for a professional career, because it's so engaging and it's so open-ended, right? So as a creative person yourself, how do you stay inspired? Like, what is the thing that helps you, you know, whether or not you're in the office, whether or not you're working, like, how do you feed that, that sense of wonder and curiosity and play? How do you do that in your own life?
Yeah. So personally, I have always said that the most important thing to me is to build work around my life and not my life around my work. And that is something, again, that I feel so fortunate that I've been able to do that. So I start every morning usually reading a book and exercising, and I really do make sure that I am enjoying life outside of the work that I do, even though I love the work that I do. So I think just feeding my soul in that way has been so important, so that when I do shift into my professional brain, I'm just always revived and energized. And in terms of work, honestly, what keeps me inspired are the clients and the people that I meet. And everybody is so energized with what they're doing, with their new idea or their new partnership or their new endeavor. And again, being a sensitive person, like, I just feed off of other people's energy. And it's almost like on a daily basis that I'm talking with a client who's working on something new, and I feel like I'm working on something new, and I just get excited over and over again. So that really, I have to thank my clients for keeping me inspired. It's just amazing. There's so much happening in Miami, and there's so many people doing and exploring, and I just love it. I really have our community to thank for that.
Totally agree. And I'm much the same way. I love being a consultant and a coach because I get to help people see solutions, kind of like what you were talking about before. But I get exposed to so many brilliant people who really like feed my soul. And when when things are tough, you know, we cry together. When things turn around, or like an experiment works, like I get to be the biggest cheerleader in the world. It's so satisfying to be able to like hold space and then solve together and then really get to know people. It's about the people for me. So it's really neat to hear you say that, because same thing, like my clients, my colleagues, my peers, people like you, they just inspire me and fill my cup, in addition to all the other things, you know,
Yeah,
meditation, exercise, that kind of thing. So that's really
yeah,
neat.
yeah, that's so awesome. I love it.
Cool. Well, this has been such a fun conversation, Jessica. Thank you so much for
Thank
taking the
you.
time.
Thank you. So, yeah, I always love chatting with you. You're really, you put a smile on my face. You
Aw.
always, you know, like you say, you hold space for others, and you always just bring like such a warm, loving energy, and you always just put a smile on my face. So I love chatting with you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks. See what an advocate she is? It's amazing. Cool. So tell us a little bit more, if people have questions about intellectual property, or they just want to know how to get started and whether, you know, pursuing something, or how to find help, you know, where can they find you, in case they have more questions or need resources?
Yeah, I would love it. Yeah, and anyone, I know a lot of people these days are, for unfortunate reasons, maybe they've been laid off of their jobs or they're being furloughed, they're kind of using this time and thinking, you know, I've always wanted to do this thing, or I've always thought I'd be really good at this thing. I've had a lot of conversations with people who are making that leap. And if any of your folks are in that boat, I would love to chat with them. I always say that casual chats with me are free. I'm always happy to chat with people. So Jessica Shraybman is my name. I think on Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook, we're as Shraybman Law. And also the website is shraybmanlaw.com. And I'm happy to post that information anywhere, or you can post it. Absolutely feel free to share it with anybody.
Awesome.
And an email is team@shraybmanlaw.com, and we're pretty accessible. So I'm always happy to chat.
Amazing. And I actually have to say, like, I've known you a couple of years, and it was really only about last summer when I was thinking about, you know, publishing my book and thinking about this trademark, that somebody I know really well is like, you should talk to Jessica, she does it. And I was like, what? So it's been really fun to get to know this side of you, to be able to share it here, of course. And definitely we'll put the links to all of your social, your email, your website in the show notes. We'll be putting this on YouTube so that everybody can find you, and hopefully see this and learn a lot about you and intellectual property and how the practice of creativity looks like in your work. So thank you again. What a treat.
Thank you. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday indeed. So everybody, I hope you join me in thanking Jessica, and stay creative.
Yeah, awesome. Bye.